Welcome to Sunlit Brushstrokes. When I paint white flowers, I like to add color. I look for those subtle reflected hues on the petals so I can create colorful whites that feel alive and connected with their surroundings. In today's video, I'm going to show you how when I exaggerate my colors in the flower, I then have to make adjustments to the background to keep things harmonized and balanced. Plus, I'll give you some tips to make your background painting easier. Now, if you're wondering why this video is coming out on Thursday instead of my usual Friday, I decided to just take a little shift for this week. This Friday is Good Friday, and I personally like to take time to reflect on the sacrifice of Jesus, and I know that some of you do as well. Plus, because this is an Easter-themed project, it'll give you just a little more time to work on this project before Easter. The Easter lily is a symbol of new life, and to me, it beautifully reflects the hope that we celebrate on Easter morning. When Jesus rose from the dead, he conquered sin and death and offers new life to everyone who puts their trust in him. So with all that in mind, I thought Thursday was a perfect time to share this. Because I was crunched for time, I decided to just go ahead and trace today's project, and you can find an outline for that in my Etsy shop. Let's go ahead and get started. This is the photo that I used for today's painting, and you can find a link for it in the description below. The thing that really attracted me to this photo is the beautiful color that I really can see in those petals. And that's actually one important tip that I have for painting white flowers is to find a reference photo that does have some beautiful color already in the shadows or even in the light parts of the flower. If the photo is taken on a cloudy, overcast day, you're not going to find that the same. This is something I intentionally look for when I plan to paint a white flower. So what I want to go ahead and do to get started is to give this a nice wash of kind of a golden yellow color. You can see that golden yellow in the background. And we're going to put that on at the end, but first I want to put some of that color into the lily itself. That's one thing to know about white flowers is they often reflect, or they do reflect, the color around them. And so we're going to get that in as a starting point. So to mix up my yellow, or my gold color, I have with me my Hansa Yellow Deep as usual. And I'm going to actually mix on this plate today. This is just a dollar store plate, but I'm going to use it as a palette to kind of give myself a flatter area so you can better see the color that I'm actually mixing. So I'm starting out with my Hansa Yellow Deep, and then I will just take a tiny little bit of the quinacridone Rose, and I'm really just aiming for a very, very slight kind of goldy color, almost too orange maybe. Not bad. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Let's try it. Okay, so we're going to take our flower, bring it over here, and just give everything a nice quick wash of water. Or I should say all the petals. And I'm using a nice soft brush to get the water on here, but it really doesn't matter what you use. You just want to have the water on here. And I do like a softer brush just because it does hold more water, so it makes it faster to get the water on, but it really doesn't matter. Soft, firm, whatever. I have to watch. I've almost lifted my lines too light. I want them really light because this is a light flower and it's going to show if my lines are too dark, but wow, I can almost barely tell over there where my drawing is or where the trace is. And some of these places are almost too dark, so go figure. Once I've got the water on here, then I'm just going to take my yellow and just drop it in several places, and then I'm going to let it dry. So this is something you could do in stages if you're busy and you just want to have a few minutes here and a few minutes there to do some painting. This is perfect for that. So take the yellow, and I can kind of see a lot of yellow. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you get yellow on these stamens because they are going to be golden, very deep golden yellow later. So I'm just going to start here, and I'm going to kind of pull this yellow away from the center. You can see a lot of yellows in the center, but you can even see that yellow kind of golden color just ever so slightly in the other areas of these petals. So I'm going to just put a little bit wherever I see it. I would say where I see more of it. I feel like I see a little bit over here. This particular petal seems to have more of a golden kind of undertone. So I'll go ahead and just get it beautiful and golden there. And I am working on the, I should have mentioned, the rougher side of the cold pressed paper. Sometimes I use the smoother side. Today I'm using the rougher side. And then, or I should say the more textured side. I see kind of some shadow color here. And again, it's going to get more deeply colored later. Definitely, I see yellow here. So let's get that golden color going down here. You can see I'm not quite as wet. That's okay. I can always guide things around if I want to, or if I like the way it looks with a little bit of that little bit of white showing there where I haven't fully wet that shape, that's okay too. You can kind of do what you want to do. I want this to be fast and hopefully not too perfectionistic. I want it to just be a fun, relaxing project here. So put a little more yellow under here. And then yes, I see yellow undertones here for sure. So just drop that in here. And do I need a little bit more on this one? I see a little bit up here. Maybe we'll put a smidgen more, just up here a little bit. And I know these are very subtle yellows. I'm exaggerating today. I'm exaggerating my color. I like to do that when I'm working with something where color is subtle. Sometimes I think it's kind of fun to almost exaggerate the color and just makes it more obvious that it's there. So I think I'm happy with that for yellows. And since I'm at it, why don't we just work wet on dry and just put a little bit of this color. You can use wet on wet if you want, but I'm just dropping the color into the leaves so they have a basic kind of undercoat here. You can see I kind of had it run into there, and that's okay. This is all yellow, so we should be fine. Just put a little bit here, and this is almost like a slight bud. It's just opening, I think, here. And I'm going to be trimming this down, so I actually will draw some little edges around the side of this as well, because this painting doesn't actually come right up to the edge. I took a little artistic license down here with the leaves. There's a couple leaves here. There's one that kind of runs behind. We have our stem right here. And then there's kind of a variety of stems and leaves back here. It's a little mushy, but we'll just get some yellow on there and call it good for now. Put a little bit of yellow there. I might wash this around a little bit. You can kind of see it's almost hard edged, not quite, but just put a little water there. Okay, I'm going to call that good for the base coat, and I'm going to let it dry, and then I'll be back to do all the next colors. All right, so this is fully dry. So now we're gonna go ahead and mix up some more colors because we want more reflected color in here. If you look really, really closely at the photo, you'll notice, and you might have to download the photo to see this because it's pretty small in the video here, but you can almost see some hints of like maybe a little bit of blue here. Do you see that? It's really hard to see, but it's subtle and it's there. And you can even see a little bit of like almost a purpley pinky color in some places. So we're gonna have some fun with color. So we're gonna mix up our pinks and purples and blues here, and then we will paint them on there. So I have my quinacridone rose and my phthalo blue, and that's all I'm using. So let's start out with some quinacridone rose and just take some straight onto our palette like this and add a little extra water. We want it to be nice and watered down. Then we will take some of the blue. I'll just let me wash my brush here. Take some blue, put it over here, maybe a little bit more. And then we're going to make a little bit of a mixture of the two together. So let's just kind of get a little bit of a purple color going here. I think that's good. We can always tweak it a little bit depending on what we decide we need. We can always throw a little more, you know what, let's just put a little bit more quinacridone rose over here just so we have it. And then we'll see as we go what we actually need and how much we need. So move that to the side. And I'm really just going to repeat the same steps in terms of wetting. I will just put water on all of the petals, and then we'll drop the color in. So I'll just do this really quickly. I'll just speed the camera up as I wet things. Now you can pick up whatever brush you would like. I have my 6 here, and we're just gonna drop a little of that color in. We don't want too much, so I also will have my water brush handy so that I can kind of move things, guide things if I go overboard with my color. I wanna exaggerate, but I don't wanna be like too crazy. So let's go ahead. I'm seeing a little bit of a slightly pinky kind of look right there. You can see I clearly didn't get enough water right to the edge there, so it's kind of getting a bit hard edged. But we're gonna put a little bit of pink right in here, and I feel like there's a little bit of color down in here. More so the purple, but I'm gonna put the pink in just so we have it. And like I say, I'm exaggerating the color from what you see in the photo, but I think this is gonna look really pretty to have a bit of color. It's gonna make it look more springy, and it's just gonna have the impression that this flower is kind of picking up color from its surroundings. It's just gonna have a little extra life. Okay, maybe a tiny bit here, not too much. Like I say, I think that's probably okay. I'm gonna go with the purples now. That's where I'm seeing more of it. The purple can almost represent anywhere you see a nice shadow. That's where we want our purples. So this one will be a little easier to spot. It will make a little bit more sense because I'm gonna be putting it where my pinks are in some places, but this is just gonna push that shadow a little bit more. So it gives it the impression that there is a bit more of a shadow in here. And you could use a firmer brush here if you want to kind of soak water up. You can see I'm using my soft brush, which isn't as good for soaking things out, but it does work. So I'll just keep using it for now. And I'm going to come down here, put a little bit there. I definitely see some shadow in this area. You can see it's almost like there's a shadow, a very, very faint shadow being cast by this stamen here. So I'll put that there. Let's get a smaller brush here for my water. There we go. So I've got my smaller 8 now. This is a Simply Simon's brush. Easier to control the water with it. And I'm going to take some strokes downwards with my brush. I got a little bit of water. And sometimes I'll soak the water up on my paper towel, and I can kind of create a little bit of this, you know, the impression of these little creases and folds. So I'll stroke my brush a little bit in the direction of those. Let's do a little bit here. Let me stroke it a little bit as well. I'm going to have to move along faster because things are going to dry if I'm not careful. So let's try and move a bit faster. Yes, you can see right there, that line I got kind of dry. So let's soften that with some water. All right, I see some dark over here. There will be a lot of green coming on here still. So don't worry about the fact that, yes, that's kind of purpley. I just feel like there is a shadow there. Then I can see some color up here. Or I could say even more so shadow. So this purple is a nice shadow color. It's just a little bit of a neutral purple when it gets on top of the yellow, and they kind of cancel each other out a little bit, and yet it's a prettier effect when you let them come on separately from each other rather than mixing the yellow and the purple together right in your palette. By drying that yellow first, the purple kind of lays on top of it rather than completely mingling in. So I think I'm happy with that. You can see what I just did here. I used a thirsty brush to kind of clean the edges off there so that this was a little bit darker behind. And then let's do a little bit up here. You can see some shadow, a little bit of shadow here, a little bit down here. And if you find you're not working fast enough and you are getting hard edges as you do this, you can always do one petal at a time. I went and painted all of them, like got them all wet first. There's no reason you couldn't do it piecemeal though, and just do one petal, and it might be more relaxing for you if you find you can't quite work fast enough to do them all at once. So keep that in mind. I'm also seeing some shadow here, and you can see I'm clearly, as I'm putting this on here, this is definitely getting drier. And so I can use my soft or my damp brush and soften that a little bit and get just a little bit more soft edges to these shadows. I don't mind a bit of the hard edges. I think it's kind of neat, but you would definitely soften it more if you want a little bit less texture there. And maybe put a little shadow here, maybe a little bit in here. I'm getting to the point where I'm going to have to call it quits and dry it and just let all these, colors be. I almost missed the blue. I want to just drop a tiny, tiny little bit of blue. You can see I'm missing most of it. It's turned into purple here. Whoops. Now it's all going to be purple. Let's just try this again. A little bit of blue. Put it over here by itself with some water. And I'm just dropping this in a few little places. And if your painting's too dry, you can wait and do this after. It's wet enough here that I'm okay. So I'll just blend that around ever so slightly. I see some blue over here. Just blend it around ever so slightly. Like I say, this is subtle. We're exaggerating colors here. Where else can I put a little bit of blue? I feel like there's a little bit here. Let's see if it will behave. Yeah, it's still wet enough. I think with using the more textured side of the watercolor paper, it's allowing me to have a little more time. Plus I was fairly wet when I put my paint on. Like I wet things fairly well. Here, clearly not as wet. But if things are acting up on you when you try and put this blue in because it's been too long since you put your water, just let everything dry 100%, then come back and you can do the blues almost as their own layer, if that makes sense. Things are wet enough, I'm getting away with it. So I think I'm going to call this good. I'm going to go ahead and dry it, and then I'll be back to add our next layer of color. I'm noticing this part maybe I could lift a little bit before I dry it. I'm just going to use a little bit of clear water and just thirsty brush, just lift a little bit. Okay, let's go dry it now. All right, so this is dry, and what I want to do now is do a little bit more piecemeal. We're going to work on this larger petal right here, and we're going to put the green in, and we'll work kind of one at a time, just because if we try and do a lot of detail, we're going to have to work around these little stamen here. This is where, if you would prefer to mask them, you could. If you'd rather put masking fluid on them to kind of cover them up, I'm going to paint around them. There's no reason you can't use masking fluid, so do what works for you. And you'll see as I do it, it does take me a little bit longer because I'm going to have to work around them. So let's make our green quickly here. And I will just take some Hansa Yellow Deep on my brush. Get a little more. I want to not run out of my yellow or out of my green color, so I'm going to be a little bit more generous with my paint this time and take a little of the phthalo blue, and I will definitely need to take more phthalo blue out of my well. So let's take some of that. You can see I've already tried mixing greens using this phthalo blue already. It's got a little bit of a greenish tinge, but no worries. All you really need is the phthalo blue and the Hansa Yellow Deep here, and we can decide later on if we want to throw a little more of our, like more of an olivey green. I'm going to just start with this one. So move this out of the way here a little bit. Bring our painting back. And I have my 8 and 6 Simply Simon's brushes for this. I'm going to wet this shape. It really doesn't matter what brush you use for wetting. I'm going to just wet this big shape. So let's just do the big section of it first. Get a lot of water on there. And yes, everything's fully dry, and that's why the paint underneath isn't moving around as I do this. Plus arches or any good quality cotton paper is going to help keep those bottom layers that we already applied, keep them from lifting as we put more water on here. So we're going to just do this, as I said, just this one petal. So come up to there. Now this is the part I'm going to take my time and just kind of carefully go around the stamen. It wouldn't matter if you get a little bit of light green on them, but you don't want to have a ton of green, right? Because we do want them to be yellow in the end. They're kind of a dark yellow, but still. And of course, I don't mind if it gets green on these little green parts of the stamen, right? Just not the yellow parts. So we'll put a little bit of our green here underneath. Wow, we're really, really bright and intense right now. I'm just gonna let this green kind of fade up into the water above. So we'll just go nice and dark with our green down here. Fill into here. Where else do we need to go with our green under here? I'm going to do those persnickety parts first, and then I'll move into the easier part. So I'm trying to pay attention to my shapes if I can. Come out to here. And just drag the color up just enough. So we're looking at the reference photo to kind of decide, okay, how far do we need to come with our greens? Let's take a nice stripe of green down the middle. You can see I don't have much on my brush. Let's try that again. I'm really wet right down there. I can see a little puddle, so let's just soak that up a little bit. Okay, try this again. Nice green stripe. Whoa, okay, that was the opposite now. That's too extreme. That's okay. I'll soak it out a little bit. Put a little bit over here. I think I've got more than enough green now. Oh, come down into here. Okay, I think that's good. All we need to do is just lift a bit of this out, because wow, I went brighter than I need to. Not that it really matters, it's pretty, but I think that's good for that shape. And since everything's wet enough down here, I feel like I can do this petal because I'm pretty wet. If this was starting to dry funny, I would have to wait. But I'm going to come in here, wet this shape. I'm not wetting this little piece or this little piece, just the rest of the petal and not the stamen or any of that. And then I can drag this green a little bit further this way. So kind of the same, almost like we're turning this into one bigger shape now. Like I'm letting it kind of go back and forth between the two, but we're coming downwards just a little bit this way. And yes, it's coming further than we want. But again, I'll just kind of use a thirsty brush and lift a little bit of it out. So just let it do its thing there. I'll eventually paint this green here, but I'll leave it for now. And just kind of lift a little bit so I don't go too extreme with our green. Maybe something like this. Yeah, too much green. Let's lift a little bit of it out. I think that's good enough. Okay, can we go anywhere else while we have the green on our brush? We could very, very carefully put a stripe of green like this. I'll show you what I mean. I'm coming on. You need to have your brush ready to go, a nice wet, clean brush, because I'm going to be doing wet on dry, and that's giving us an extreme hard edge there. I have to quickly get it softened. The clean brush. So soften it and soften it. See what I just did? I'm kind of getting that nice vein there, but I'm lifting some of the green out. I can go like so. All right, let's leave that be. Now this one, I don't want to take the chance of doing this one yet. I probably can. There's a chance we could have some background and blooming happening, so I'm going to let it be for now. I'm just noticing I have a really kind of wonky edge here. Let me just clean that up. I might have to, it's good enough. Okay, let's see. I could probably do a little bit of a vein in the middle here, almost the same way I did this one up here, where I just come in here, wet on dry. I'll just do a little vein almost, if you want to call it this. I guess I kind of have it a little bit, it's a little bit more of a different shape than what I've got. Oh well, just do it about like so. Maybe we'll just stick a little bit more, because I almost feel like there's a bit of a green hint in this petal almost. Again, probably reflecting some color from the environment, the leaves around it. We'll see. Again, I exaggerate things sometimes, so if you don't want it this green, don't make it so green. Okay, so what I want to do is the leaves since I can. Now along the edge of this petal, I'm still dry, so I'm fine to do these leaves. Let's check down here. Yeah, wet down here. I'm gonna have to be careful when I come down there, but let's do the top for now. And we'll just basically fill these in with our green. So if you would prefer to go with a little bit of water underneath so your edges are automatically soft, you could put a little water in here, but you could also come in almost just, again, wet on dry and fill in these shapes. I have a combination here. Some of these shapes are still dry, some are wet. Doesn't really matter what you do. We're just putting a nice light green. And you can pay attention if you look at the reference photo. If you see any areas that are really, really light, you don't have to put as much green in. I think I'm just going to go ahead with this green, fill it in with green, and then I can add a darker green on top to create the variation in our leaves. So we'll just fill this in for now. This one right here is a dark leaf, but then underneath of it, we have a bud. So I'm going to put a little water on here and put a little less green, put more green kind of up beside the leaf, and then just pull it this way a little bit, and we'll get more detail on that little bud after, but you can kind of see it's a bit lighter, right? All right, let's see. Let's do the ones that are furthest away from our petal, and then we'll work our way closer to the petal based on how dry things feel. So I'm just gonna fill this in same way, just with this nice bright green. You know what, this can all be one shape here. Let's just take a little more water, and I am working wet on dry right now because these are such small shapes. We'll do some wet on wet later, or even just wet on dry and soften edges later. We'll see when we come back. Okay, I want to get some thicker green down here because we do have, it's hard to see, everything's a little mushy, but we just know that there's a bunch of stems and leaves kind of, so we'll just fill it in green down there, maybe even a little bit more, just make sure it's got enough of a base to stand on there. Okay, let's see. I think if I'm really careful, I can come up to here. I just will try not to just like, I'll try and avoid touching the petal if I can, because I think I'm almost dry, but it's just a slight bit touchy. So I want to be careful. So far I'm okay. If my petal was too wet, I would get a green bleed happening into the petal, and I wouldn't want that. So I think I'm okay. Okay, we got lots of leaves here. This is actually, again, we have more leaves down under here. Do we want all those leaves? I'm kind of inventing, and I should be careful. Maybe I'll do another chunk of green here, since we do have another chunk of green in the reference photo. Probably will just help it. Let's do that. Sometimes you don't have to even know exactly what's going on down there. You just have to paint it the way you see it. All right, I think I'm happy with everything. I think what I want to do is dry this before I do this one here. And is there anywhere else that I can go? I think our next step is to dry it again. So I'll do that and then I'll be back. All right, so now that it's dry, we can do this petal here. And one thing we want to pay really, really close attention to when we go to wet it is the fact that there's an area that's quite white here. I don't want to put water on there. I want to have almost a hard edge. So I'm going to come in here. If you can't see what I'm talking about, actually, I'm going to draw it in with pencil because mine's almost, you can barely see it, but can you kind of see, like, if I go like this, where this area is white and then this area is green. I don't really want that line to be too there. I just want that to show with where the paint is. Does that make sense? So I erased a little bit, but I want to keep that line in mind. I'll just fill in this rest of this petal, have it kind of come up this way. Can have it just, we're not going to be putting green up here anyways. It's just putting water on so we get soft edges. Then get this little number 6 brush again with our green on it, and the green is mostly down here. I almost am thinking my green could have more yellow in it when I'm looking at it, but well, make yours more yellowy. If you prefer more yellow, I might throw a little bit of yellow into this mixture. We'll see. but I've already got this green going. I think I'll just leave it. I can always put a little bit of yellow in my next layer if I need to. Yeah, that's all I'm going to do with that one. Maybe bring it up just a smidge. Maybe this vein here. Just kind of, and yes, if you did that, be careful. It might be easier to come from this direction and go this way, because you could see I got like a little star where it ended there, and I had to kind of smooth that out. You could always do it the other direction of what I just went. So anything else? I'm kind of wondering if we just want a little more, yeah, just a little more green down here, just a bit. Probably going already overboard with my green, so I'm gonna be careful here. Again, I've got my, this is my paintbrush, this is my water brush, so you can see I go first, getting my greens on there, and then I'm kind of softening things with my water brush, just to make sure I'm happy with the shape. Okay. Okay, I'm overworking it. I keep going back and forth, trying to figure out what I want. Okay, let's leave it be. The other thing I can do is a little vein right here on this petal, so I'm coming in with my wet on dry technique, and then I'll soften it. Again, I'm softening it with my water brush. So this is just, again, another brush, just clear water. Get a little bit of a vein there. And we could do the same thing right here. We'll have a little bit of a vein. Again, you don't have to be as green as me if you don't want to. You could do this vein with more of a purpley color even. I'll probably come in and add a little bit more color in some of these shadow areas after, but I'll just do it so. So I put like that. Again, I'm just soaking it out with my water brush because I went a little bit heavy. I think, where else? There's a little area in here. It's got a touch of green. We can come in here, just this little shape here. I'm just gonna put a little bit of green, just a tiny little bit there. And then again, soften the edge and just leave it alone. You do the same thing under here. There's a little bit of a shape as well. There's an area where it's almost like there's a line of white, kind of, it's part of this petal. Leave that line of white dry and just come, so you have like a very, very faint little white line there, barely there. And just fill in this. Again, with our green, soak it out a little bit. I think I went a little bit wider than I would have liked, but at this point, I'm not sure if I can scrub it out or not. Let's try this. Sometimes when it's wet, it's better to leave it alone and come in, just kind of fix it later, but let's scrub a little bit of this edge because I kind of came into the background a bit. Just scrub a little bit, then I'll just take a paper towel and just dab. And we're going to be able to define that a little bit with the way we do our background. Right now, it's kind of weird looking, so just be aware of that shape there. It almost looks like now I've got it faded into the background. I think if I come dark enough with my background, I'm going to be able to carve that shape back. I might fix it with green. We'll see. I'm getting persnickety and I wanted this to be fast, so let's see if there's anything else we can do before we dry it. Oh, you know what we can do? We can work on the leaves while this is drying. So I will make more green. I'm going to want a bit of a darker green anyways for this vein here. You know what? Let's first put this, I'm going to go repeat this same green I've already been using, deepen the vein, and then I can always come in with a darker green after. So I'm not 100% happy. Let me get a better position. I'm not 100% happy with the way this vein is looking. Got to bring it over this way a little bit. So let's just do this bottom shape right now since it's wet. So I've gone with I've got like a hard line because I went wet on dry, and I'll just soften with my brush. This is again, just water, clear water, and it's fairly thirsty, the brush. It's not super wet. Okay, do you like that? I think that really helped. Then let's go over, ooh, I just painted my stamen. Oh well, it's gonna be okay. I didn't get it too bad. Okay, I need to soften this really quick here because we're gonna have a hard edge. I'm not gonna be happy, so I'm gonna move kind of quick. I think that's better. I'm not going to worry about the fact that stamen's a little bit covered. I'll just let it be for now. I can always tweak it when I go to paint the stamen if it's still bothering me. So I'm just using water to make sure I'm happy with how things are softened here. A little bit more green because I'm lifting it. Yeah, I think that's going to be okay. I'm just going to let it be, let it dry, and we will work in the leaves. And just clean that edge up a bit. All right, so we definitely are going to need to make a darker green here. So let's move this out of the way. and maybe even make it a little bit on the olive side. So once again, I'm starting out with my Hansa Yellow Deep, and I'll just, you know what, I'm gonna just keep mixing it into this green that we already have. I'm just gonna turn this into dark green. Let's hope I'm happy with that idea. Hopefully I won't want my light green back. Alrighty. Just grab another brush to touch my blue because I'm so saturated in yellow. Why wash all that nice yellow down the drain? So take a little bit of the phthalo blue. We'll see, I think I'm pretty heavy here. Let's see what this is looking like. Oh, we're okay. Yeah, I'll just use my dirtier phthalo blue and take a little bit more out. And then to get this kind of dulled down, I will use a tiny little bit of quinacridone rose. So let's take a little bit of our quinacridone rose here. Ooh, I might have more than I need, so I'm going to just put it here and just kind of add it a little more gradually. You can see how that's turning more olive. No need to use 2 brushes to mix. I'm just being kind of stingy with my paint and I didn't want to wash my brush. I like that green. I feel like I could have a darker green as well. That's a really nice medium green. Let's just go over here and add more color and turn some of this into a darker green. So that's very olivey. Taking a little more phthalo blue. Ooh, okay. Or a lot more phthalo blue. Sorry, I'm going to get back in the screen. You guys can't see all my paint here. So then I'm taking some of my red again, my quinacridone rose. Okay, I can already tell I'm getting, that's enough. You see that purpley color I'm getting? That's enough. Now I'm going to need to use a bit of my yellow to just get it a little bit brighter. We've got a really almost like a dark blue color there. So let's take some more of our yellow and just get it to where we're happy with it. I might have too much yellow. That's a nice dark olive green though, isn't it? Should we put a little bit more of our blue color? We can even just take some of this out of here. Let's just mix it into here. See what we get with this, because this is mostly blue here, right? It's a little bit of a purpley blue. It's not bad. I'm still wondering if I want a little bit more phthalo blue, just a tiny bit darker, because those leaves are really dark in some places. Yeah, that's better. I'm looking at that reference photo and I really feel like I could probably turn these a little bit more on the olivey side. I'm really intense and that's pretty, but we might as well go a little bit more on the olive side. So I'm taking a little bit of red, mixing it into here. You can see immediately I've gone more of an olive color. I'm happier with that. And this one I think is still, do we need more red in there? It's iffy. It's close to what I want, so I don't want to overdo the red. And then maybe even a little bit of a yellowy color over here too. I'll just take some extra yellow and put it here, and this will be like kind of a bright olivey color if we need it. We'll see. Just have a bit of yellow there if we need it. Maybe even a bit of fresh yellow too. I want to give ourselves some options here. Okay, now we have lots of options. Let's go and see how this works. So let's put some water on a couple of these, and we'll do these two here. So let's put water on them, get them to the place we're happy with, and then we'll kind of come to the lower leaves. So we're going to work a little bit piecemeal now. Ooh, my paint is kind of moving around goofy, but that's okay. This will be our lighter green. I'll drop a little bit of it in, and then I'm going to be dropping that dark green on right away so we get darker. And I'm actually going to use the 6th brush instead of my 8. My 8 was what was in my hand, but I think I want to go into a slightly smaller size here. Soak a little bit of that water out near the ferrule. So this is kind of drier, so we have a little more water control. You can see up here it's really, really dark. So just take a little bit more of this dark green, drop it in here, and then just drag it down. And I'm doing it kind of like with a little bit of a linear motion because we want to get those like really beautiful, nice long veins showing. Let's do a little bit here. Okay, I'm really wet. That's okay. I'm going to just guide it around in a minute. Not getting as much definition as I might like, but that's okay. We will let it dry a minute and then we can add more definition. I feel like I'm going to need more richness in my blue. I feel like it's almost too watery. So let's just add a little more blue here. Ooh, okay. Or a lot more blue. And some more of this yellow. Sorry, everybody. Getting this mixed up, I think I'll be happier with it now. Okay, with a better dark olivey green. More of it. I guess it's more concentrated. The other one was just a bit too watery. All right, this is almost okay if I come back in. Let's see, let's try if it's dried enough in those few seconds. It's getting there. You can see it's moving around less than it was before, partly because the paint is more concentrated, partly because this is dried for those few seconds. I'm gonna let that be for a minute and we can come and deal with it more later if we want to. So bring this down just a smidge because I got a funny shape there. And then let's come all the way down here. And I'll just finish this shape from above. I think this is part of this leaf. I think it just kind of runs through here. Put a little water on there. And like I say, I'm gonna not worry about these kind of joining in some places because everything's just looking mushed together down here anyways. Wow, I deformed that for a minute. Change the shape, that's okay. It'll be what it is. Let's throw a little bit more of this dark here. Soften the edge, let's just get water on here. I feel like I could even be darker still, but that's okay. We'll just start with what we have. Might go ahead and I'll do these kind of a little bit separate from each other. What I'm going to do is just paint one of these, kind of the middle. I don't know if you want to call it the stem or part of, I guess it's part of a stem. And just fill it in with that dark and then maybe lift a little bit on the light side. I'm just noticing it's kind of reverse of how I often paint my shadows when I'm just taking artistic license. This one is clearly the light's coming from the left in this photo. I'll just put a little bit more dark in here. I feel like I got a lot of nice dark on my brush, so that's good. It's one of those things. Sometimes you pick up your brush and you got less paint, and other times it's, oh, that was better. I had more paint that time. So let's push these darks a bit. And I really like that little bit of extra olive I've got in my mixture. All right, let's see. Let's go ahead and just paint these down here really quickly. I'm going to put some water on them and call that good. So basically these three line leaves, if you will, it kind of looks like 3 stripes. Just putting water in there, and then I'll add some dark green and just let it move around. And it's kind of a nice stage of wet. It's kind of allowing me to get these, like, the variation within the green. If I was soaking wet, those little lines wouldn't stay put for me, but they're kind of a nice, like I say, it's not too wet, not too dry. So we're just gonna get a little bit of a soft edge happening naturally, which I'm happy with. And I'm not worrying about getting out of the lines. I can trim it down later. Some people prefer to tape. You can absolutely tape. I'm gonna go a little bit darker down here. I don't want to draw too much attention to the bottom here. I think I'll just fill it in with more dark green. You know, if you have a really strong, interesting light shape there, it can just grabs your eye down there, and you don't need to pull your eye, the viewer's eye, down to the bottom of the painting. So we'll just leave it as it is. Let's do this stem too. With this green. All right, and then I will soften it with my water brush. So just some water here to kind of get that a nice soft edge. Starting to deform my stem a little bit. Okay, we'll try that. Okay, I'll just let it be for now. I could put a little dark green here. It's not touching anything, so I can put a little bit of water in here. Drop a little of our dark green along here. And just move it around again with my water brush. I can see a little pink in there in the photo, but I'm not sure if I'm going to worry about it. I might throw some in at the end, but I feel like I'm already getting so persnickety today compared to my plan. I think I'm probably almost dry enough. I could come in here. Almost. You know what? I'm going to just fix this. I see it's kind of a little bit rough on the edge. You know what? I think I'm going to dry things because I would like to put a little dark green in here or a little bit of medium green, but it's just so slightly damp, like a bit of coolness. So I'm going to dry things and then I'll come back. All right, so I've dried this and now I can come in and add just a tiny little bit more green in a few places. I'm actually feeling like, now this is being persnickety. If you don't want to do this, don't follow me. I am actually going to wet this shape again and do a little bit more of my, I guess I could say almost more of like a limey green, just to get a little more yellow in here. So I'm not wetting like everything, just trying to get this one, and I might even do this one at the same time. So I just wet these two together. Again, I'm not getting a ton of water everywhere. Just want, really, where I want the focus of the water to be is kind of at the base here. That's where I feel like I could do with a bit more yellow. And then I will take some of my yellow straight off my palette here. I feel like I might even be okay with just this yellow as it is. I don't usually lay yellow on top of other colors as much, but sometimes when you're really not happy with your yellows, you kind of have to. Let's try this. Yeah, I think that's going to be okay. I just need a little more of it. Okay, I'm kind of dry if you can't, as you can probably tell. Just putting a little bit of this yellow down here. I'll move it around. I know it's intense, but I think I'm going to be happier with a bit more yellow. It just felt kind of too green for me. And this is maybe being persnickety, but I think I'm happier overall. So just let that yellowy color move around ever so slightly. Then I'll come in with my just kind of damp water brush here and just soften things a little bit, because as you can tell, I'm kind of getting a bit of a dry, rough looking edge there. It's just not quite as smooth. So just put a little bit of this water, just kind of like soften things a little bit and bring it down this way a little bit. Again, just some soft edges. I think I'm happier with that green in the middle. It's just not quite as intensely green. It's a touch yellow. I might even use a little bit of this kind of olivey color. I don't know that I can get it on right now. It might be too wet. Let's just see if we can darken. Yeah, it needs a few minutes. We'll come in, maybe add a little more of this olivey green. I took some kind of my olivey color off my palette. Kind of is working down there, kind of running around a little too much. Might be okay. Just drop, 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 drop. I might be fixing it. It's okay. I wasn't sure. I thought it might be too wet and it might go everywhere, but it's not terrible. Let's just soak it out a little bit. Right here where it's looking just a bit too, like too much darkness. We'll come in and we can always do that last bit of olive green on that line if we need to after. I'm probably getting so persnickety. Some days I'm more persnickety than others, and I don't really like being persnickety. I'm usually happier with my art when I'm a little bit more just letting it be. Okay, let's let that be. How's that? Okay, where else can we go? I guess we can finish our stems, and I definitely could put more olive green in here if I want to. I could lift a little bit right here. That's the thing. If you've gotten too dark, you can always do a little bit of lifting. You can use a firmer brush to lift, like even firmer than I'm using. You can do a little bit of this. This is a scrubber. Well, it's not a scrubber brush. It's a shader brush, and it works well for lifting. You can always use it to lift a little bit of your color out, so you can put a little bit more of your other colors in, like I just did. Then I will take a little bit more of my olivey color off my palette and drop it in there, and you can see we can get a bit more of that greeny look. It was just, yeah, I think I'm gonna be happier with that. That's one way you can add more texture back in if you feel like you don't have enough. Same thing with this one here. I was quite wet when I dropped that on, and I didn't mind some of that, but I feel like, you know what, I got darker than I had to. So you can just lift a little bit and drop a little bit of your other color. Again, this is a little bit more of a yellowy olive on my brush. Might even do a little bit of that right here, because I feel like the line is a little bit mushy looking. Put a little bit of that color on there. And then down here, why don't we go ahead and do these little shapes that are kind of in between. And I think those are all kind of like stems, either for, I guess, all the leaves or even this little bud back there. And I'm just going to put some of this green in here. Lighter green, kind of medium-ish green, I guess you could say first. And then I'll put some very dark green more towards the right side, because that's where you can see there is more shadow in this one. So kind of like along there. Just going to smooth that out a little bit too. This is getting more persnickety, I will admit. I'm going to put a little bit more on this one as well. I'll just softly blend them. I'm getting persnickety down here. And you know what? It doesn't need to be so precise. This is not the highlight of the painting. So let's just try and make it a little more simple. Just get some green on there and leave it alone. Like I say, it's hard to even see everything that's happening down there, and I don't think it's necessary to paint everything that's happening down there. I'll just go ahead and put a little bit of dark green under here. I'm not going to worry about what this actually is here. I'm just going to get some dark green on there. A little bit more, and we'll just call it a day. We don't need to sweat this part of the painting. Just put a few little strokes of green here and there, and then maybe a little bit here. I'm just going to do a few lines to represent some more veins, and then just soften them a little bit with a bit of water. And back here, this one, I might go darker with it. Just take a little bit more of my dark green, and I'll just try and fill it in back here. It can be darker, especially where the edges are meeting, because it's behind. So let's just go in here. Hopefully I'm not going to get any bleeding because things are a bit damp. If things are really wet down here for you, just wait and do this little shape after. Again, I'm going to wet this one a little bit more because it's could be a little bit more green at the edge there. I don't know. Okay, I'm getting so persnickety down there. I'm not really happy with myself. Let's move on. Let's do this just, again, dark, get it filled in, leave it alone. This doesn't have to be a special shape. Drop a tiny bit more of this darker green on here, just to get a bit of an olivey. I guess you could say this is a little bit of a medium olive. Just so we get a bit of a variation in our greens. Not much is happening down there. Then I'm going to go ahead and back here again, it's really dark, so I'm just going to fill this in. Nice dark shape. And again, dark over here. I'm just going to join that, let it join. I know I took artistic license when I drew that stem, but just do a few lines here. Ooh, it's not much dark at the top. We'll just make this nice and simple. Draw a few creases kind of for this bud. And then we'll just soften it with a water brush. Again, this is kind of the edge of the painting. You don't really want a lot of detail and you don't really want to draw a lot of attention over there. Okay, I can see clearly things could be a bit darker in some areas. You don't have to go this dark. It's kind of bugging me that I'm not darker in the bottom there. Do what you would prefer though. I'm going to put a little more of my phthalo blue on my plate and maybe even a tiny touch of my quinacridone rose. And I'm going to just be getting some really, this is going to be more of a blue, I was going to say a bluey color. No, it's more of a purpley color. It's kind of a bluey purple green. How's that? And I'm going to work really, really dry. I'm going to soak up extra water. And I'm just going to add a few details with this color. So it's really just creating a little bit more depth in just a few places. Because I feel like things are almost like fusing together and we're not seeing a whole lot of variety down in these shapes. I can soften things in a minute if I want to. For now, just trying to get some dark greens going. Maybe like that. I don't know. I'm not even looking at my reference photo. Just taking artistic license to push the greens around a little bit because I wasn't really happy with some of them. It just felt like everything was still flat back down here. So just do this. And then, like I say, I will take a little bit of water and just soften things in a few places if I feel like it needs it. Some of these I don't even mind the hard edges. Right here I might soften. Nothing too major. Just getting that tiny bit of extra green down there. Or I should maybe say extra shadow down there. Okay, let's stop being persnickety with the part that doesn't matter. Let's go over here and just add a few details. So I think, are we dry enough? Not quite. No, we're not quite dry enough. So we'll go ahead, I'm gonna dry it once more and then I'll come back and do those details. All right, time for those tiny details in the center of this flower. And I might be okay with the greens I have. I'm just gonna give it a go and see what I think. This part's a little scary. I can tell I should have drank a little less coffee today. I feel like I've got like a slight shake as I'm doing this, which makes it a little harder when you're doing details. So there's a little tip for you. If you're ever feeling shaky when you're trying to paint small details, do it when it's not too close to your coffee. Drink your coffee after you paint. Okay, that's way darker than I need it to be. So we'll just take a little more of our yellow. And I'm going to come in and just do this longer light stem here to this stamen. It kind of gets a little wider just at the very, very, very top of it. And it comes down and it kind of tucks into here. And I'm going to just dab that with my paper towel. I'm getting darker than I need to be. I'm getting thicker than I need to be. That's okay. I'll come and tweak it after. Let's just soak a little bit of this paint off and do these little stems here. Soaked a little too much out. I'm getting a little thicker than I'd like to be. Yikes. Okay, let's just try this. Somewhat inventing these. They're all kind of small and crammed in here together. I'm not going to worry about perfect realism here. And there's a little bit of one running right here. It's kind of thinner. I feel like I'm getting these too thick, but I can always clean them up a little bit after. Just lift them a little bit. Yeah, it's getting a little bit messy here. Just let it be for a minute. I'll come in and fine tune in a minute. Before I get into the fun part, all these nice little bright stem in, I want to just make sure I'm happy with all my other shapes. So here, this shape here isn't too bad. It could have a little bit of shadow. Being persnickety, I've got a tiny bit of this purple at the corner here, so I'll just use a tiny bit of that in my shadow. Just call that little shape good. Maybe a little bit over here. There's actually a little bit of a shadow right in here. Again, this isn't a necessary detail. I mean, it's interesting because the way this particular petal happens to be kind of wrapped and curled, but you don't have to worry too much about that shape. It's not the first thing people are going to notice when they look at the painting. And anywhere else I want to add shadows, I can take that shadow color, maybe just make a tiny bit more of it. So that was just our purple, right? With our yellow, with our quinacridone rose and our phthalo blue. So let's just make a little bit more shadow color over here. This phthalo blue here is midge and muddy, but that's okay. I don't mind a bit of a muddy purple here. And a little more water. I'm getting really dry on my plate. So a little more water. And then I'll just use this as like some very fine details in a few places. So I'm seeing some nice veins here. Ooh, that's really dark. You can definitely use a lighter purple. I'm going to be softening that. All right, so with that, I definitely know I need a little more water in with my purple color here because I was definitely darker than I wanted to be. I'm going to put a little extra purple up here because you can see there's a bit of a, almost like a shadow, and then you can see a little white, kind of a fold in the petal. So I'll put a little bit of purple up here and just kind of guide it downwards, like, again, those kind of creases, folds, veins, whatever. And then I'll just soften it. A little more water. Again, whenever I feel like I'm dragging the purple around, I wash my brush. And then kind of dry it so that it's not sopping wet. This is just kind of persnickety details here. So maybe I'll put a little bit, yes, right here. Definitely. I'm going to do a little bit of a wet on wet technique. Seeing, definitely want more shadow in this section here. So let's just wet this petal a little higher up. This is kind of where I could have put more shadow before, and sometimes you miss it. So let's just do that right now. So the purple color in here. I'm not liking it down where I've got the green as much, but right about here, you see that? Kind of adds a little bit of dimension to this petal a bit better. I think I'm happier. Yes. Do you think? I think so. Maybe I'll add a little bit of that shadow color right here. Just put a little water on here, a little bit of shadow. I'll have to soften the top edge because I'm going to get a hard edge right here, and I don't want it to be completely hard, but I do like that shadow color. This purple is working really nice. It's almost periwinkle, isn't it? Okay, this I'm going to want to come and do after. I can't do it now while both of those are wet. I mostly think I'm happy with the shadow here. I can just accentuate it in a few places. So I'll put a little bit of a shadow color right here. Soften it. Maybe a little bit more on the vein. Like so. And soften it. maybe a little bit in this little fuzzy thing here. I guess this is the stigma, right? Let's put a little bit of this color in here. I was calling it the stamen earlier, right? The stigma, this part. Okay. It almost needs a little more definition with the green in here, but it's wet enough. I think I'll have to add it later. If this is dry enough, I could do a quick little vein here. And it kind of does a weird little, I don't know, it moves a little different on this particular petal. The way this petal is kind of curved, I'm just going to try and get a little bit of that curvature happening. Something like that. Go a little darker down here. Just a little bit more. Yeah, I think that's okay. Just soften a smidgen. These little shapes are dry enough. I think I can just come in with a little more detail. I might use a little bit of darker color just in a few spots. So under here, I actually see it is even darker under right in here. Do you see how dark that is in the photo? I'm going to put a little tiny bit, soften it. And I probably could make this little thing a little lighter. I might do that after. Let's see if I can throw a little bit of dark detail to kind of separate these a little bit. Again, I'm not being precise here because for the sake of time, but definitely you could be precise if you prefer that precision in these areas. I'm just kind of, I guess you could say, taking a little artistic license, and I hope I won't regret it. So I put a little darker than I actually am seeing because I wanted to create some more definition. But yeah, I think I'm okay. If you don't like how dark I went, don't do yours quite so dark. All right, so now I want to take a minute and discuss the background and color harmony. So what of course happened with my painting here is, as we've been exaggerating the colors in our lily, all of a sudden the background is starting to need some of what's happening in the lily also happening in the background. And so when I went to go paint the background, I was starting to struggle a bit with my color decisions because I'm feeling like, okay, this color isn't maybe quite as harmonized as I'd like it to be, but I went ahead and I covered the whole thing with a gradation, or kind of like a graded wash, where things were a little bit more golden and lighter as I come to the top, as you can see I'm doing here. However, when I did that, it was very clear that color harmony was no longer happening in this painting. It almost looked like the lily was pasted on. And so to fix that, I ended up kind of doing a bit of scrubbing in the background, and finally I layered in a little bit of purple. That whole process took a little longer than I would like it to take, and I really don't think it's necessary for you to take it through that process. And so I'm going to show you the shortcut and what I would do if I was to paint this background again. So what we're going to do is take a minute and do a practice swatch for the background so that you can do what I show you on this swatch in your background. All right, so what I want to do is mix up some color here, and I'm after this gold color. Yes, I have some of my gold color in here, but that doesn't matter. You can just go ahead, start out with some yellows. Then we're going to take some of the quinacridone rose that we've been using, mix it in, and whoa, in that case, I got too much. Now, I could do it on my palette here, but I'm going to mix up some purple here, so I'm going to try the well for this. Let me know your opinion on me working with the well versus just a plate for mixing color. I will show you a swatch, so you can definitely tell what color I'm getting in the end. I clearly put way, way, way too much of my quinacridone rose in here, so I have to add quite a bit more yellow to get it to the stage I'm after. And then finally I will be adding just enough, I'll just scrape some of this yellow off my brush, I have tons here now. Then we're going to add just enough of our phthalo blue to kind of dull this down, and we'll test it. So I'll just go like this, pick up a little bit of phthalo blue. I'm getting too much, I think. Let's see. It's getting there, but I think we need some more red, and then we're going to need maybe just a tiny little bit more phthalo blue as well. I'm wanting to dull this down a little bit more. So I'll just speed the camera up as I continue adding a tiny bit of quinacridone rose and phthalo blue until I feel like my color is kind of a nice golden, slightly dull color. But there's no reason you couldn't go with one of these more vibrant colors that we had first if you prefer that. So let's move this out of the way. So I'm just going to show you how I would go about laying in the first layer of the background. So of course you're going to be working with the shapes. Let me just grab my painting to show you. You're going to be working with these different shapes. So what I did when I painted mine is I did this single shape first. It's really nice because if you look here, the lily petal comes and creates like a automatic block here as well as down here. And so it allows you to just do this shape first. And then when you're happy with it, you can move into another shape, another shape. And so that allows you to just do one shape at a time, which is really nice. This painting is perfect in terms of how piecemeal the background is, as long as you try and aim for the colors to be more or less the same in one shape to the other. And this is a whole lot easier to work with it this way than had your background been like all the way up here and the lily stopping here. You would have had to come and do like the whole background at once, and that's hard. So we have it nice and easy with how things are broken up here. So once we go ahead and put water on our paper, this is Arch's paper still, but it is just a scrap. So I'm just going to fill the area in with water. Then I will take my paintbrush with my paint loaded up, and I'm just going to come in here and drop in some color. And you can just kind of almost like pretend you're doing abstract painting. You don't have to do anything overly special here. You're just going to kind of move things around. If you feel like your color is getting too light, you can add a little more paint, or if you feel like you're too dark, you can throw a little bit of water in there. You can do a bit of lifting. You can do whatever you want to get a kind of a nice abstract golden background over the entire background. You can even drop a little bit of water in here if you want, create some interesting little blooms, or even just this, like I say, moving things around. Of course, you're going to be working a little slower when you kind of come right up to the flower. Your flower, you know, if it's over here, you're going to have to work around those petals, but the background itself should be fairly straightforward just to get that color on there. And like I say, I would have done this for my background had I thought about it, but at the beginning I was trying to get a smooth background, which is actually a lot trickier, I think, than getting a nice abstract background with these little patterns and whatever in it. So you can see I'm just playing around with the brush, getting something I'm kind of happy with. You can decide where you want your lights or your darks to be. Maybe you want the lightest part of the painting to be, as you can see in the photo, lighter in this upper corner here, and then get a little darker and then light again. You can do what you want. This is your opportunity to play. But this is just how I would go about getting a nice abstract background. And I would do it in layers, I think. I did mine in layers where I had all of my gold first, and then I came back in with my purple color. I'm going to be showing you how to do the purple color next. I'm going to let mine dry, add the purple on top. But I'm just going to show you quick. If you were the type that you'd rather do it all in one shot, there's no reason you couldn't grab some purple. I'm just taking some from my palette here. I will show you some how I'm going to actually do it. But if you wanted to, this isn't what I'm suggesting to you, but you could drop the purple in even as your gold color is wet. It's just your purple and your gold will end up mixing more together, and it's easy to start overworking it and getting mud, and you can do it. Like, it's totally doable, and it can look pretty. You just have to be really careful that you don't overwork and have everything go muddy for you. So you can do it either way. I'm going to just leave that little section painted this way, but the rest of it, I'm going to show you how to add the purple on top. So once this is dry, then I will do that. I'm also going to mention, depending on how much color you actually have in your lily itself, if you didn't exaggerate your colors as much, you might want to just use the gold and just do a gold background. I was definitely happier when I added the purple to mine, and so that's what I'm going to show you as our next step. All right, so I have dried this. And I'm also going to mention, actually, when I do something like this and everything's really, really, really wet, like a background, I usually let it air dry for a little bit, like just dry naturally. And then after it's a little bit drier, I'll use the hair dryer. You can kind of come in with the hair dryer while it's really wet. It can just be, sometimes depending on how wet things are, you can end up moving the pigments too much with the hair dryer. So I do like to kind of let things partly dry before I touch it with the hair dryer. I thought I would mention that. All right, so our next step is the purple. And we could mix the purple here. We actually have our purples I was mixing from before, and I'll just put some water here and then some of the quinacridone rose and some of our phthalo blue, and we will be set. Now you can actually have more than one purple if you want. Like, okay, I really like this kind of pinky purple. You could have a pinkier purple and more of a bluey purple, or you can just go ahead and have one purple, whatever you prefer. I used a little bit of variety on mine, so I'm gonna go ahead with this. And then we're just gonna repeat those same steps. But by having this yellow dry underneath, it's less likely to move around on you. Yes, you can lift some paint sometimes when you come over with your second wash. But if you're using Arches watercolor paper and you've dried it thoroughly, generally those lower layers will stay put for you. All right, so then all we need to do is come in here and drop in our color. And I found sometimes the more pinky color went better on top of areas that were, I guess, maybe richer gold. That makes sense. It tended to layer on there nicer. Whereas if something's a little too bluey and you mix it with the gold color, you can sort of get a little bit of a green undertone. Just something to be aware of. So you can basically, like you see, I'm just really doing scattered random patterns. Often I do try and somewhat join my dark shapes together, and I let the light shapes somewhat be joined together to create my patterns. But you don't need to overthink this part. Just have fun with it. And you should be able to get a fairly simple but beautiful background that's harmonized with your lily. And you're getting these beautiful colors. And as you can see on mine, I was much happier with my final result when I had those beautiful purples layered on top of my gold. So I want to mix up some color for my stamens. I'm going to mainly use some of this as my base color and just throw it on my palette with some of my other colors here. Just see what I can get. I want it to be basically what I have here. So we'll just add more yellow and we'll use the colors that are here. This actually, the yellow and my muddy colors and my pink, don't you think that's like it? I think that's good right there. I'll do a darker version too, because there's some shadows as well in the stamen. So I'll just take some of this yellow once again, do it over here with a little bit more of the quinacridone rose, so that we kind of get a nice dark shadowy color. And yes, it's not just the yellow and rose, right? It's going to have a little of that phthalo blue because I've got phthalo blue in my mixtures here. So super easy. Pretty much every color I make that's dull, it's going to be those three primary colors, just in different amounts. And I might decide to go even darker, but we'll see. Let's just start with this and paint in those little details. And actually, the other thing we can do for details too was there was a little bit of green right there in the stigma too, right? So maybe I will just take a little green off my palette from over here, and I'm just dry. I'm going to dry my brush so that it's like drying at the ferrule of the brush, leaving the paint in the tip, and dropping such a tiny little bit in here. Kind of like that, see? Just a little bit of green just adds a little something. And I might even put a little darker green right here because it is a little bit of dark green there. These are the persnickety details. I think I'm okay with that. Okay, now let's just take some of our bright stamen color, and we might decide, you know, we want to go a little darker yet, but we'll start with this. Let's just go ahead and just paint these directly. All of them, we can do them all at once, and then we'll just divide them after by adding our darks. Let's just fill this in. If you find that you want to make them a little more like jagged or whatever, you can do a little bit of a bumpy motion as you apply your paint. If you have hard edges on here because of the way the green was, you can always do a little bit of this to scrub. I'll show you what I mean. This is my shader brush once again. More likely I'll call it my scrubber brush. It's a shader brush. You can always scrub a little bit because you can see that kind of hard edge that I had there. I can just kind of scrub a little bit of that green out. Anywhere I'm seeing a little bit of green that I'm not happy with, or any hard edges that I'm not happy with, I can just kind of come in here and do a little scrub, make it a little bit rough edge there, and then just come back in if I want to with this color. I don't even mind that little bit of light there either, but we'll just do a little bit here. And this one is a little bit bigger. I think I might scrub it a little bit in this direction. I feel like it could be, I don't know, it seems like it should be bigger in the reference photo, and I think it looked good if it's a bit bigger. So I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. There we go. And then I think this color, the darker color I made, is probably still not dark enough. So I'm going to take a little bit of my purple color that was over here, mix it into here, and then a little more of my pink. We're basically kind of getting a brownish color. And yes, I'm very, very dry right now. I have to add a little water to my palette, and I'll pick up a little bit of my quinacridone rose from over here. Try and get our color a little bit more on the brownish gold side. Something like that. Could probably even have a little more red still, because those stamen have a little bit of a reddish, more of an orangey reddy look. I'll probably put too much of my purpley blue, but we'll be okay. Do you like that color? A little more. I keep going into my quinacridone rose. I want it to be more on the, almost like the terracotta color side. Okay, so these are damp. So let's just dot a little bit in here. Oh yeah, I'm very, very wet. Too concentrated. I'll dot a little bit in here and then I'll come back in with the goldish color once again. So I'm just putting some of this color. This is pushed behind that one. Put a little bit of it over here. And my light is coming from the right side, or I mean, sorry, and the light is coming from the left side in the stems. You can see it's really hard to actually even tell where the light and the dark are on these stamen. I'm going to come back in with more of a medium color. Right now I'm just putting in some of my darker color just to get it on here. Oh, I like how it's working here. We're still wet, so I'm getting a nice kind of wet on wet look. I like this. Much happier with those ones. So I'll just soften these ones a little bit with a damp brush now. I cleaned my brush, tried to clean it, and just soften these shadows a little bit. And then I'll come back in with just a little bit more of my gold color, maybe make it a little bit of a orangey gold. So back into my yellow up here, bring more yellow down here and more red. So it's a little less brown, we have more like an orangey color. So yellow and red into our kind of gold mixture that we already had. Put a little bit more. I think I will want more of the gold color. I think I'm getting too dark, which is fine. We'll add that in a minute. I'm going to just soak a little bit of it out with my scrub brush in a few places. This is going to give me a little texture too, because it's a little bit of a rough brush. Sorry about that. I almost ran right out of the camera view. Yikes. Okay, what I want to do now is just use my scrubber brush and just lift in a few spots the edges. Now I'm not going to worry about, as I told you, all that stuff there. But I'm noticing in some areas I would have liked a smoother edge, just at the edge of my petals. I kind of like have a little bit of a weird overlap with the background and the petals. So I'm just scrubbing it gently like this with my scrubber brush right along the edge, and then just dab it. You can use paper towel or whatever to give it a quick dab. Same thing over here. Use the shader brush and just give it a little, just a gentle little soften right along that edge and dab. Maybe a little bit down here. Just slight. I'm just going to soften it and kind of lift some of them out, especially where I've gone over the edge and right into the petal, which is what I did here. So I'm happier with it now. I've got a cleaner edge. I don't mind a little bit of those, you know, hard dark edges, but I just don't want as much of the, but I definitely don't want the background coming onto the petals. So just do that in a few spots, a little bit here. And basically I just keep washing my brush and drying my brush so that I don't, you know, end up pulling the color and dragging it places I don't want it. I want a clean brush to do this. As soon as my brush starts to pick up the color, I will wash my brush. And I'm just being really persnickety now, but I really like the edges that I'm getting with this brush. I'm going to turn my page a little bit, clean this one up a little bit as well. And then this is an extra step where I'm just going to push my shadows around a little bit. You definitely don't have to do this. I'm noticing I got a little bit of a hard edge there, so I'm just going to gently rub it. And then this is one petal. I hadn't got all the purple on here that I wanted to, right? I want to make sure the edges are dry right beside it. And what I want to do is put a tiny, tiny little bit more purple on this one, right where the edges meet. That's going to help push this petal behind these two. So I'm going to put water on here, come up to the edges, try not to cross the line into the petals in front. And this is where I'm going to take, I should have left a little more of my purple on my palette, but I've got the smallest little bit here I can reach still. Take a little bit of that color and just put a little bit along this edge here. I'm going to lift it a bit because this is really dark and it's almost too blue. That's okay. I'm going to lift it in a quick minute here. I just want to get this definition happening here. So I'm going to come in all the way down into here so that creates that nice edge. And then I'll just use water to kind of soften and pull it upwards. And if I would prefer a different kind of purple color, if that's too blue, I could always throw a little more of my pink in here. I've got a little bit of pink on my palette. I could drop a little bit of the pink into my purple color here, just to make it more the purple we had before. I'm just going to turn my page so it's easier to blend it downwards. Just add a little more water, move that around, and that's going to help. Like I say, it's just going to push that petal backwards into the painting a little bit. We don't want it too extreme, just a little bit of something. And if you feel it's too extreme when you do yours, you can just lift it out a little bit, or you can even do this with a paper towel. Just gently dab it. I'm introducing some fuzz into the painting. Yikes. Anyways, you can always just dab a little bit if you don't want that line to be quite as harsh. But I think having a little of something there just helps to, I don't know, I like how it's pushing it back a little bit. Again, don't want to be extreme, just have a little something. I might put a little bit of shadow right here. My painting is dry right here, but I'm going to just push this. It's usually the back petal that gets darker, but in the photo, it is this one that's a bit darker. So I'm going to put a little bit of darkness there just to give it the impression of there being kind of a shadow because the two petals have overlapped and it's like the light isn't shining through as much right there. So just put a little bit of a shadow there and put a little bit of yellow in here, maybe a little bit here. But otherwise, I think I'm going to call that good. And then finally, maybe a tiny little bit of my shadow color, like this dark brownish color, just in just a few tiny spots on the stamen. Optional. Maybe I'm being too overboard. I'm going to just drop a tiny little bit of it in to almost create, and it's dry while I'm doing this, I'm creating just a tiny little bit of shadow, a little bit of texture just in a few spots. I want to be really dry, like basically dry brush. This is a very dry technique I'm using now. Just want just a tiny little bit, just for the smallest little texture, and I'm kind of bouncing my brush a little bit so I get the impression that these are a little fuzzy. You can see how it's just adding a slight bit of something. And this one back here is darker, so we're going to darken it a little bit too. Maybe a little bit more of the orangey color back there. Something like that. Lift just a teeny bit of the color out. I'm going very, very precise now. And then I see a tiny little, like I'm getting so persnickety, everybody, but this, I'm noticing a tiny little gap or a tiny little spot of green in here. Do you see that dark little tiny green dark stripe? I'm going to throw that in there as well. It just adds a little, again, not essential, but just kind of a nice little detail. Might blend it out just a little bit right on this side. If you've enjoyed today's video, you'll want to check out my watercolor playlist where you can find more videos like this one. In the meantime, I hope this video has brought a little taste of God's beauty and peace into your everyday life, that this will enhance your Easter celebration, and that it's inspired you to continue enjoying your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye!